I'm pretty sure I interrupted a smuggling operation while I was stopped at a truck stop. Once in a lifetime, you take a pretty epic trip. For us, it was a month-long trip from southern Ontario to the end of the Alaska Highway. Now, if only there was a two-dimensional representation of that whole journey that I could use to show you just how far that was. It's one of those trips where you may ask yourself, well, where does that highway go to? It goes to here. It goes from here, along that way, through here, here, and here. And if you want to say to yourself, how did I get here? Watch our videos about the trip. So you can pause this and then watch that, so you can see what I'm talking about and what we all learned, or you can watch this and then watch that. Choice is yours. Or watch this, watch that, watch this again, and then watch that again. See what I did there? Before we get to the things that I learned while on this trip, which I'm pretty sure is the longest trip that we've taken since I've had the Teardrop, I want to give a big shout out to one of our biggest fans. Aries, you're a very good boy. He is a big boy. He's a very good boy too. And his human sends me videos of him intently watching this. So I want to say that, Aries, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you watched the video. And again, you're a very good boy. So when I was thinking about the trip, it's funny, when I'm on the trip, I don't really think about the trip because I'm always thinking about the next day. So now it's been a couple months, it's been a few months. So we got back in October, it's now March, and it's like everything's just kind of had a little bit to percolate. So these are the things when I was thinking about this video that I wanted to share. And this is my experience. This is just what stood out to me. Your list might be different. It might be completely obvious to you. Let me know. Let me know in the comments below what you're thinking. My organization changed. And it's funny how it can change. You can have everything set up like how you would for a 1 week, 2 week trip. But for some reason, this one was different. And the biggest thing for me, and this is gonna sound so silly, but I used to keep my table, my folding table, in the back of the car, the trunk. Is it a trunk in a RAV? It's a hatchback. Do you still call it a trunk? I know for my British and maybe my Australian friends, it's a boot. Let me know. But as the time went on, I started keeping the table in the back of the galley, just like tucked on top of everything else. And for me, that was just even more convenient. I'd throw that open and there's my table, there's my stove, boom. The longer we're on the road, the more messy that place looks, but I've decided to keep the table in there because it just makes things that much easier. I also noticed that little things that you don't really mind over a day or two become so much more irritating. Like if after 21 days you're still trying to shift a bin, like maybe you didn't secure a bin, I need to come up with some kind of strap system to keep all the bins in place. And this sounds so silly, but it's such an irritant when you open up your galley, you're like, oh, I gotta shift this bin over here to get the one that I want. Or my water jugs kept moving and knocked over my little 5-pound propane tank. Oh no, it's 11-pound. Size matters. When I had a little tray for my smaller propane tanks, like my 1-pounders, that thing was always just like flinging around. Nothing that was unsafe, but it's just, if you have to shift everything around, it's like I said, it's so small, but it's so big. I had like little bins that I keep my socks and underwear in, and I had to put it in the top shelf of my in the sleep space every day. Doesn't matter how smooth the roads were, those bins would always fall down. And again, not a big deal, but it's like sometimes they would explode and my unmentionables are all over the place, which is fun when the curtain falls down out of the frame so everyone can look in potentially and be like, I see your undies. When I first got the trailer, I put small mesh holders over the door, but then this trip I added larger ones on the walls. So one side was my t-shirts and one side was my pants. Oh, that was such a game changer for me. It just made it so easy. I could literally just like cycle my shirts through, or like, what do I feel like, what black t-shirt do I feel like wearing today? But other than being easier to, plan your wardrobe for the day ahead, they also acted as almost insulation. Because my wall is just like plywood, just wood. I don't have fiberglass, that's too fancy for me. It reduced the condensation because cold outside, warm inside, no matter how much you open those vents, unless it's really warm out, you're gonna get condensation. So that reduced it. Now, did it reduce it because my clothes were soaking up the moisture? I don't think so. But speaking of condensation, I do actually have a waterproof mattress cover, so that, if you're worried about the moisture seeping into the mattress and making everyone sick with some kind of weird bacteria, I thought about that. So I'm lucky the dogs are very good travelers. I mean, they've had plenty of practice. It's only in the name of our channel. They adapt to it very quickly. The longer we go on, the better and faster they change and they adapt to the change. King especially, he is so vocal and so, the only way I can think to describe him is demonstrative. When he's unhappy or when he wants something, he has no problem with letting me know. Where are you going? I think he wants to go to bed. You're not going inside. You're not going in the trailer. It's too early. And I know some people are like, oh, you shouldn't let your dog bully you around. You shouldn't let your dog push you around. You shouldn't let your dog blah, blah, blah. Well, why would I discourage him to tell me what makes him comfortable? If getting into the trailer makes him comfortable and he wants that, why would I discourage that? If getting into the car, well, he waits for me to pack up, makes him uncomfortable, why would I discourage that? I do it safely. If he's in the car, I'll open the door and I'll leave them tied to their tie out. But why would I? No, you're gonna wait until I tell you can go in. And I think because we've kind of established and developed that trust, they trust me more because they know that I'm gonna listen to them. I'm gonna do what makes them feel comfortable. Because this whole traveling thing, that's my idea. They're just along for the ride. They love it, and I love that they love it. But what do I get from pushing my will around? The one thing though is that any kind of deviation tends to confuse them. So typically what happens is when we get in for the night, when we stop for the night, their blanket goes out, their water goes out, their long lines come out, we'll bring them out of the car, let them eat, let them stretch legs a little bit, we'll go for a walk if there's a place to walk, and then we go to bed. Well, if we stop early, King especially is confused. He's like, what do you mean? Why are you getting all this out? We should be going now. So that's something that became really obvious to me. It took me a while to kind of figure it out because usually we're going the full day and then we stop for the night. So he would think, oh, it's time for me to go to bed. Well, no, it's noon. You're not going to bed yet. And sometimes, if we stopped early and he just really wanted in the trailer, I would let him in the trailer as long as it wasn't too warm. So that was something. Learning to read the dogs really became more and more important the longer on the road we were. Another thing about the dogs is sand. Sand will get everywhere. Doesn't matter how much you wipe their feet off. It doesn't matter how dry they are. Sand will get everywhere. So it's one thing if it's just a weekend, you kind of brush it out, no big deal. But there were a couple times I was shaking that trailer out every few days just because it just got to the point where I was like, I can't. I said, a week I can handle it, 2 weeks I can handle it. But after a month, it's like, no, I don't want a sandbox in my trailer. So I had to find a good place to strip it and shake it out. Reversing a teardrop or a small trailer is a pain in the rump at the best of times. But I think when you are towing and reversing every day for a couple of weeks, you almost turn your brain off, which makes reversing sometimes more difficult. It's similar to when they say you're more likely to get lost on a hike that you've been on 7 times. The first couple of times you're really paying super attention. You've got the map out, you're reading every sign, you're looking at every blaze. After about a dozen times, you know it well enough, you're very comfortable. It's that in between, they say that you're more likely to get lost because it's like, oh, I'm a little bit comfortable, but not knowledgeable enough to know everything. And I think sometimes with the trailer that happens too. I know people are gonna argue with me on this one, but the way I see it is this. If you can trip on flat ground, if you can bang your knee on a desk that you sit at every single day, if you can walk into a wall in your own house, why do we think that sort of thing is impossible with a trailer? So what do? If you're just not having a day, stop, take a break, take a breath, start again. Do the thumb trick. I love that thumb trick. And yes, I still say righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I can admit it. I think the longer that you're towing, especially at a time, like if you tow, if you've been towing like for 5 years, but you only do it once or twice a year for a week, that's one thing. But if you're towing every single day for weeks at a time, you're going to get more comfortable with it. And I think, again, the brain kind of turns off a little bit, or you will push those boundaries a little bit. It's like when you first get a car, maybe like, especially if it's a different size than the one you've got, and you don't know where that car is, you're like, oh, I'm going to hit that. Oh, I didn't, right? I think it's the same thing with a trailer. For me, especially, it was how low it can be sometimes. You look at it, you're like, oh yeah, I can make that. And then you go, bam! There were a bunch of other places, but I have a nasty tendency of underestimating where my hitch is, and there's nothing quite like that sound of it smashing off of some uneven ground. And Mr. Pouty Pants, do you want to talk to the camera now? Hey, Mr. Pouty Pants. Not always good at judging distances. I've been told my whole life, this is 6 inches. Cut me some slack. As long as you're not going to damage anything, I think you should push the boundaries of your trailer and of yourself. If you bump into something, as long as you're going slow, you're not going to cause any damage, but you're going to challenge your boundaries. The only way you get better is to push yourself. You got this. I think sometimes the plan just doesn't always work. Like I had my food worked out. I was like, I'm gonna have this for dinner, I'm gonna have this for dinner, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have this for breakfast, I'm gonna make this. There's a lot of it I didn't do. That's just how it is. Especially, you know, the longer you go, the days get exhausting, and you just sit there and go, I don't wanna break out the griddle, and I don't wanna do this. I'm just gonna go with my, you know, easy ramen, or I'll just grab something, because that's how tired I am. And I found that the longer we went on, the more that kind of set in. But then at the same time, you got more comfortable with cooking. So there were times where I didn't even want to look at my stove. And I didn't. And there were other times when I got like super ambitious. I'm like, yeah, like gourmet meals. I was having this craving for Chinese food one day. So I did the closest that I could, and I ate way too much food. Oh my goodness. Towing fatigue is real. People will tell you, well, it's just a small trailer, it's really not that tiring. It can be exhausting because you can't drive as fast as you're used to. You still have to worry about, you know, how do you take your turns? You have to make sure that a gap in the traffic, or when you're going to make a turn, is big enough, or wide enough, or long enough for you to make that. Your gas mileage increases, which means you have to stop and get gas more often, which means you're interrupting your trip. So even if you just kind of lock your brain off and go, that's something you have to be aware of. And sometimes you just want to park in a normal spot. You have to find a longer spot. You have to find another place. You have to make that decision. Do I park in a place that's closer to where I'm stopping, but it's in the sun? Or do I park farther away from where I am that's in the shade? Is there something to that, especially when you have the dogs? Or if you're in a place that's maybe a little bit sketch, do you want to be out of sight of your trailer? So that's something that you have to think about. And I don't care how well balanced or how small your trailer is. If you're in a very windy area, that's a whole new level of anxiety. I'm lucky, I've been in some pretty windy places and the trailer didn't even wiggle. But driving home one day, and yes, it was winter roads, very windy, but I'm behind a truck, a big truck, with like a landscaping trailer. Not quite as streamlined as a Teardrop, you know, one of those boxy trailers. Had a panic attack for this person driving. I'm behind this trailer and I'm watching it go. The back end would go towards the ditch. The wind would blow it. It'd go towards the ditch. And I'm just like, oh, let off my gas. So I'm giving this person a lot more space. And I'm watching them brake, and then they go again. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, what would I do? What would I do if that were me? Would I find, because there's nowhere to park. There was nowhere for this person to stop and wait out the wind. Because this wind was a lot, like we're in the middle of a storm. High wind warning and all that, so it's not like you wait it out. He almost went into the ditch. That is something that you have to worry about. And again, I'm sitting there going, what would I do if that were me? What would I do? What would I do if I was in a really windy area and the trailer was doing that? Tow anxiety, totally legit. And last but not least, the travel fatigue, it is real. Now my personal style of travel is we haul rump to get to a destination, then we take our time. Even doing that, even once you're in that take time, you just want to be in your bed and not have to worry about bears or are there weird people down the road who are going to come and find me? Is this truck stop safe? I mean, there was one time, not this time, but there was one time, I'm pretty sure I interrupted a smuggling operation while I was stopped at a truck stop. Okay, let me tell you that story really quick because I've alluded to it before. So we parked in a large parking area next to a gas station. I'm thinking this is for trucks. We're on a major highway. We're on the Trans-Canada. So this is for, big trucks. So we park at the far corner, away from the gas station. I figured they have priority. We'll just tuck ourselves out of the way. Now there was a small path that led up. It looked like an ATV track or something. So we parked just kind of past that so that people could still, take their ATV out, but we're out of the way. We're way past the bend from the parking lot and all that. No signs anywhere, no pavement markings or anything. So I just out of the way as much as I could. And we walked up there because I wasn't sure what was up there, and it goes into a aggregate grinding area. I don't know if it was active, not a public area, and the gate to the road was closed. I kind of ducked up there. I was like, oh, we can't walk back here. I wasn't sure if it was like a park area or something. Obviously not. No fences or anything, no signage, but tucked up there, we're like, okay, this is not open to the public. Back down we go. So later that night, it's dark, and a truck pulls up right next to me, like a transport truck. And I hear someone get out and they walk around. Eventually the truck leaves. So I'm like, wow, the parking lot must be really full. If they're parked right next to me, it must be full. So I look out, there's the parking lot's almost completely empty. There's maybe 5 trucks. This whole parking lot's a huge parking lot. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a little strange. A couple hours later, same sort of thing happens. Truck pulls up right next to me. I almost could have reached out through my trailer and touched them. That's how close they were. And I hear someone get out again and they're talking to someone. I don't know if they were talking to someone on the phone or they was talking to someone else. And they're like, oh, this parked right on the stop line, and they're like, oh, so I'm sitting there going, well, I'm the only person parked here. And I look out towards where the pit was, and at the top of the hill, there's someone standing there, silhouetted by lights. And someone's walking around the truck. Well, luckily I had the meathead, and he put on his big boy bark, and that person, they stopped, walking around. So I'm going, that's strange, because how would you, what do you mean stop line? And then I figured that I was parked in their spot and they were just gonna run stuff up there. So now I'm like, well, shoot. If they had just knocked on the window and said hey, can you move? I would have, no problem, I'll move. Let me bring my dog with me so that you don't get any silly shit. And the fact that they didn't ask me to move, again, tells me, okay, you don't want me to see you. You don't want to make any, point about me parking where I'm parking. And it didn't occur to me till later that the light, I had parked under under the lights, that was out. So this was obviously something that happened. So now I'm under the blanket. I'm trying to do I call someone? I can't call someone because they're gonna hear me calling maybe the police or something. So I was like, okay, let me just wait it out. And they did eventually leave. But the whole thing was just so weird. You could still feel stress even if you're having fun. If going out for a long time, it's oh, you shouldn't be stressed because you're having fun. It happens. Accept it. Do whatever you gotta do to work with it. Give yourself a day, give yourself some rest. Had so many things I wanted to do, catch up on editing and stuff like that, but I didn't do any of it because I just wanted to chill. That's what I learned on my big month-long trip across country in my Teardrop with my dogs. Let me know your thoughts below. What do you want to know about a month-long trip? Is there anything that surprised you? What surprised you? Did you take a trip that long? Let me know. What was the biggest kind of eye-opening experience for you? Thank you for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. I know I say it with every video, and that's because it's true. If your dog wants a shout out, drop their name in the comments below. They can get the next shout out the next video. And Aries, thanks for watching. I know you're still there. See you out there. Safe travels. You're Bigfoot.